What's up, everybody? This is a special edition, episode 22 of Politically Conscious. Glad to have a couple of regulars back in here, but I'm featuring Leo today because we're putting this together as an opportunity. It's Politically Conscious. If you've been following our first 20 episodes, thank you to all the watchers out there. We're averaging 200, 300 watchers, viewers. Let's get those numbers up. We've had a couple shows go above 700, so definitely keep supporting, if you will. Subscribe to our page. This is a special edition, so we're just popping up on you. So if it sounds a little rushed and no intro, it's because we got some very important stuff we want to talk about in addition to what's in the news when it comes to these politics, because we all know that the 24-hour news cycle ain't enough for as fast as politics moves right now. And so if you are a first-time watcher, I'll just simply say, typically we play political cuts and give you a left, right, and independent viewpoint on these various cuts, trying to wade through the propaganda. Our motto is, if you listen to the propaganda, if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us, is what I should say. And so with that said, we're going to make the introductions even shorter because we don't plan to. Oh, y'all hear that?
I hear you, sir.
Yeah, okay, I'm hearing a double take right now, and I've never had that happen. So y'all bear with me. Okay. All right, you know what? I think I may have it playing two faces. Hold on, y'all. Let me figure it out. All right, I see it. Yep, that's what it is. I'm hearing things twice because I had another open. I didn't realize it. Okay, y'all. So that was I was hearing that. Okay, sorry, y'all. So let's keep the introductions even shorter than normal because, again, that's this pop-up show. We just want to get to the nitty-gritty, talk about what's in the news, and our brother Leo, we're featuring him because he's going to teach us some politics today. And at Politically Conscious, as we want to raise your awareness on politics, I think it's also smart that we educate you on how things in politics pay out so we all can learn and be better citizens and understand the power of our vote. So, Emil, just a super short one, and we're going to jump right in.
Emil Bryant, political consultant. I help people at federal, state, and local level tell the truth. My job as a political consultant is to remind my candidates that if they tell the truth, the people can handle it. Plus, bad news does not get better with time.
I love it. Leo, I know you, if you will, give your background, and we're going to play a cut to get started our normal way, and then we'll just jump in today.
Awesome. Leo Smith, principal, founder of Engaged Futures LLC, which is government relations and political strategy, policy advocacy, that sort of thing. And my primary work this past session that we're going to talk a little bit more has been focused on lobbying. So looking forward to also chopping it up with Emil and you about some candidates that might be jumping into the fray for the midterms in 2026.
No, absolutely. I just titled this Politics in Georgia. Let me highlight as we cover, again, politics across the nation, if you will. But I think everybody knows and understands, if not this past election, but at least the election prior, that Georgia is a key swing state. It's, quote, I guess, considered purple now to a degree, or it can go both ways. One of the few states that's not locked in. And so in that sense, while we're going to detail some things that are happening in Georgia, I just want to highlight for our viewers why this is important to you, even on the national level. And again, an opportunity to become more empowered and understand what we should be watching for, how we should, if we will, I'll even say, hold our legislators accountable because we understand the timing of things, understanding when, if you will, sessions end. I'm the moderator here, and I'm learning from our astute experts, if you will. But let's start out with the big news, and then we'll kind of narrow it down and get a little detail here, because this was the big news that came out of the Georgia session.
A rare scene at the state capitol this afternoon, 2 days before the end of the year's legislative session. House Democrats walked out of the House chambers.
That walkout came in protest of a Republican-backed bill regarding gender-affirming care for prison inmates. Let's get right to Fox 5's Deidre Dukes for details on what happened. Deidre?
Yeah, that walkout happened just about 2 hours ago. Now, this is one of several transgender bills sponsored by Republican Senate members this session, and House members walked out of the chamber in protest about 2 hours ago. Now, they filed out of the chamber before Senate Bill 185 came up for a vote. SB 185 would ban gender-affirming care for inmates in state prisons. Republican Senator Randy Robertson is sponsoring the legislation. He said there are currently about 5 people who are are incarcerated in Georgia who receive this care. Now, Republican lawmakers have also introduced transgender bills to ban gender-affirming health care to state employees, prevent medical professionals to prescribe puberty blockers to children and teens, and a bill to ban biological males from participating in girls' sports. We spoke to House Democrats who accuse Republicans of being engaged in political theater, and we also spoke to the bill's sponsor.
We came here to focus on the opportunity for Georgians to live, learn, and earn. And what do we get? Political theater. What do we get? Bills that want to legalize discrimination. What do we get? A whole lot of nothing. And our citizens deserve better than this.
We're up here, we walk into this building knowing each and every day there's going to be legislation and policies dropped and pushed and championed that we're not going to agree with. Whether we agree with it or not, turning our backs and walking out is never, never the right thing to do.
Well, the final vote was 100-2, with all Democrats abstaining. That bill now heads to the governor's desk for his signature. At the state capitol, Deidre Dukes, Fox 5 News.
All right, Deidre, thanks for the latest there. Well,
so that's the news that came out of Georgia, because for the most part, I'll note this. In my lifetime, I've never paid attention to any state legislature session ending. And so obviously they made the news because this is one of the bigger issues that's been talked about consistently during this last 4 years, if you will. And even to the point that President Trump addressed some of this in his inauguration speech, if you will. And so I'm highlighting that because, again, we have to, if we're going to talk politics. Again, we're going to go a little deeper. But I'll say this as someone, as the independent here, if you will. I'll say, here's my assessment. I want to hear y'all thoughts on it. But Emil, if you recall earlier in some of our shows, we've kind of highlighted for our community, African Americans specifically, I've consistently highlighted that to a degree, some of what we're seeing, even as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, that I often say that the Black community kind of gets lost in what's happening specifically with the transgender issues, highlighting that while that's being included, I'm talking about our community, in my opinion, sometimes gets set aside. And so when I watch and see that clip, if you will, I'm focused on, wow, they walked out for 5 people. Now, I know it's not that simple, right? I'm just being honest. I understand that it's not that simple, but I'm still saying, here's what crosses my mind, saying, hey, we kind of are, as I always say, collateral damage in what's really being focused on by the Republicans, if you will, African Americans specifically. I'm just trying to be clear here for people who haven't seen our previous shows, that we as African Americans are collateral damage. And so to see, if you will, a picture of mostly Black African Americans on that clip standing up to say, hey, we're going to walk out on that transgender issue. And I don't know that our community is personally as focused on that particular issue as we see those legislators walk out. And does it make sense to the culture? That's kind of where we're at. That's what it makes me think. I'll shut up and let you jump in first, Emil, and get Leo's thoughts on it as well.
So the history of Black people in America is that we're always collateral damage, even when we're the primary target. So this is probably one of the challenges that those legislators face, that I don't think this was the right way to solve the problem, right? There are thousands, tens of thousands of people whose lives are being affected by other issues around which they could have galvanized themselves and walked out to make a giant statement about equality, about diversity, equity, and inclusion, about how resources are being distributed in the state. So the optics of this, in my opinion, do not lend themselves to the African-American voter saying, they stood on principle for me. They stood on principle, but did they stand on principle for the volume of voters who could affect the trajectory of the state and federal elections in the next cycle? And to me, that's a missed opportunity, because they chose to take a very narrow issue, and this is where the collateral damage comes in. And Montoya, I think you're absolutely right by asking that question: are we collateral damage? The answer is unequivocally yes, because what they didn't do was tell the people who put them in office that these are the issues that we will die on the hill for on your behalf. They said, no, this issue over here that affects a very small segment, and I get the reason why. It makes sense to me, but it doesn't make sense to me that that's what you chose to do, because the transgender community is probably the most victimized community in America. It is probably the most overlooked, most marginalized, most maligned, probably the most mistreated in terms of political footballs. They're the ones getting kicked back and forth and being mistreated, and all they want to be is human beings living their lives. But what I'm concerned about is, although their situation is one worthy of attention, is the attention that those legislators placed on them, the attention that's going to help them the most. And I don't believe that the transgender community, are being helped by that walkout, nor do I believe the people who put them in office to represent them are being helped by that walkout. And I think that's where the problem is. The best way for them to do their work would have been to stand on business and say, we reject this bill. It's bad. It's wrong. It's potentially.
Let's vote against it and stay in session. Like we're making this more than what it is. And let me say this: she says we get political theater. That was the political theater.
100%.
Go ahead, Leo.
No, I mean, you guys are covering it well. Most people know I'm a former Republican strategist. We formerly worked for Georgia GOP, worked for the RNC. And there's strategy behind this. And I want to make the theme of my talk with you brothers today: do Democrats learn? Because did we not just go through this where all the Dems said Kamala Harris was going to win? It looked like it was hers to lose. There's all kinds of other issues. But do we not recall that there was one big commercial that Republicans and Republican PACs played over and over again, knowing as she was getting all that momentum, as that music was boom, 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 those Beyonce tunes and stuff were being played. She had everything going for it. But then the Republicans hit her with that gender-affirming care bill that she passed in 2016, and they played that thing over and over, and her voting stuff started to plummet with young people, with men, with just moderates, independents. It just started to plummet. Now, Democrats go, and didn't they see that she was supposed to say, I no longer believe that? Just like when smart Obama went, I've evolved on marriage equality, right? He's a politician. He's a smart man. That was smart. He played to a wider base who was concerned about that issue at the time. Not that it wasn't so small. She and the Democrat strategists who continue to advise Democrats to do stuff like that walkout, stand up, be counted, fight, fight, fight. They don't have that edge, brother. And that is a problem. That's why young brothers, young people who want to say, can you get as mad as Republicans about some issues and stand up for what you believe? So if you believe in this issue on principle so much, right, stay there, fight so that you can be counted. Because now what's going to happen, let me play this forward. Okay. History can teach, and I don't understand why Democrats aren't paying attention to history. You lost a campaign because Republicans killed you with the issue of transgender surgery in prisons. Okay? Now, that is why the Republican legislature threw that bill into the floor in the first place. They don't care whether it's ever happened. It doesn't matter if it has ever happened. They did it to see what you would do, and then to let your constituents see what you're playing for. They wanted Black voters who usually vote for them to see, they ain't care about you. They ain't like you. They're playing with some elitist kind of highbrow kind of concepts that don't really have much to do with whether or not you can pay for the price of eggs, get gas in your car, get a good education, get a tax break. That's not what the Dems are fighting for. They're fighting for little issues like that they say this is a little issue, it shouldn't matter. Then why don't you just sit there and go, no, because it doesn't matter. Then you're on record for voting against it. But you know what I'm going to tell my Republican candidate, Emil? If I get a candidate that's running, it's hard to find good ones that aren't crazy. But if I get one that isn't crazy, I'm saying, look, you're going to attack that Democrat by saying this person didn't vote no on this transgender issue. That's how many. And Dems just walked into another trap, not learning jack.
It makes me frustrated, Leo, because what you said is 100% true. And the thing is that when you take a principled stand, you need to take a principled stand that resonates with people down here in the gut, down here in the heart. And this doesn't. And that's the problem. For the transgender community, it resonates deeply. And I feel for them that they need justice. But this is not how you're going to get them or anyone else you represent justice in this way. There's another way to solve this problem. And you said it, go on record with a loud and strong no. Filibuster this bill if you have to. Whatever the rules say that you can do those things in session. Use the session wisely. It's only 40 days. You got to be smart about the 40 days you have to legislate. Once that's done, go back to the giant issues that affect the largest amount of voters and make sure their concerns are heard. And if you got to walk out for that, because this is just a way for them, the other side, to pigeonhole you into something that doesn't matter to the bulk of your voters.
Emil, it was so obvious that I don't know if everybody knows. So, and we'll talk a little bit about how bills go through the process of getting to the final day of Sine Die and what, all that. But so when they assign the bills out of committee, they create a calendar of how we're going to discuss these bills before when the session starts. You know what bill got SB1, Senate Bill 1? It was this bill. It was the first bill. So it's political. So Republicans are like, let's throw it up there. It's SB1. Because we know it's going to set the Dems up, and they just fell right.
Right.
I'm like, and we know they're going through all kinds of party turmoil. They have a lack of confidence in their leader, Nikema Williams, who just resigned, right? So yeah, they got major problems. And somebody needs to get some smart leadership up in the Democratic Party.
Hey, the guy played, and you gave, in a sense, gave us the understanding of what we actually saw, because these are the insights behind the walkout. And we're also, as we're learning right now from Leo, our featured guest here and political strategist, that this was an even bigger issue than what we actually saw, because like you said, now you're not even going to be on record as saying no. That's even more embarrassing for the few people that this absolutely concerns. Even they don't have you on record as saying no. Great point, Emil. So what I looked at, Leo, if you will, I'm going to just share some of the actual big ones that passed, and you can kind of jump in where you fit in. Because again, in my opinion, we're taking this as a learning session for someone who's, in your position. And Emil, feel free to ask as many questions, because again, we want our audience to become more conscious, more aware of how politics were played out. But here are some ones just by name that passed that were kind of just largely put in the news. And then Leo, if you will, jump on any one of these that we need to kind of dig into more. But child tax credit, House Bill 136 passed, religious liberties bill, Senate Bill 36 passed, income tax bill giving the state a flat tax of 5.19%, House Bill 111, and 112. Hurricane aid passed, lawsuit limits passed, cell phones. I personally care about this one. Been wanting kids not to have cell phones in schools, but school cell phones, House Bill 34. No kindergarten through 8th graders may use cell phones throughout the day. I personally love that. And we just highlighted Senate Bill 1 and Senate Bill 185 is the one in which they banned males into women's sports, and then there's a American First license plates. But I personally don't want, I can say that personally don't want to see males in women's sport. That's just a personal take for me. But anything on there that you want to jump on, there's some ones that didn't pass as well. So I don't know if you want to start with one that passed or even one that didn't pass. Anywhere you want to start, Leo?
Well, no, I mean, look, let's just start straight out. I mean, as part of that $38 billion operating budget that got passed, that $250 tax credit doesn't sound like a big deal, but as Kemp continues to say, look, I'm going to return money back to the citizen whenever I can. That's one of the things that makes that particular governor so favorable amongst Georgians, that he's continually giving more money to educators. He's continually giving more monies back to the citizens whenever we have largesse in our tax revenue. So that bodes well for how people look at that. At least the governor's Republican, conservative, yes, but clearly he is focused on things that matter most to citizens, like making sure that we have a budget that's operating, unlike Congress oftentimes, and making sure that people are getting money back when he feels like we've taken too much from them. Hey, this is why Kemp is popular. So that, to me, was the primary focus. One thing that you missed there in your good review there, one big thing that Kemp had on his agenda, which I think people need to be concerned about just from a knowledge point of view, was tort reform. Now, tort reform means like litigation, trial attorneys who are really representing clients who are what we call the ambulance chasers. So if you're getting off the airplane, or you're just driving up 75 or whatever, and you see all these Motley and Associates and this, attorney, we will get you some money, and all that kind of stuff. Well, that stuff has gotten, you see that obviously there's a lot of money being made from it, right? Otherwise, those $10,000 a month billboards wouldn't be jumping up. So they're doing, so in other words, Kemp got lobbied. I'm a lobbyist, so the businesses, big businesses have lobbied. They don't want people suing them with unlimited, uncapped amounts where they can sue people. Some folks were getting some big money suing folks for all kinds of stuff. And the Chamber of Commerce in Georgia has a lot of power, and they lobbied Kemp, and they said, you got to do something about it. That was his personal bill that he wanted done. And yes, now there's a cap on how much you can sue folks for. It's going to be harder to sue. So if you're trying to chase an ambulance, you think, I'm going to get paid by suing them because I slipped in the restaurant floor. It's going to be much harder in Georgia now. So be aware of that. That's one to be aware of.
No, absolutely. I actually love that as well. And let me say this for anyone outside of Georgia, and who may not know, as Leo's kind of pointing out, Kemp being favorable in this state, highlighting that Kemp is also the one that stood up to Trump when Trump was saying that the actual presidency was, not falsely, whatever, when he
elect fake electors and all that kind of stuff. And even there was a bill, guys, that there was a bill to basically put Fonnie Willis on trial for bringing them to court.
Wow.
Now, there is a bill that got passed that says that Trump can recoup his money, and all the people accused can recoup their money. Then that bill it only passed through committees, is now being discussed. So as we look at all the bills that went through this session, this 2025 session, the bills that did not get voted down or did not get voted on, they're still alive to come back for the next session in 2026. That's how Georgia works. So those bills that people brought up, like, should the taxpayer have to pay for the people who are the fake electors, that bill is actually still alive.
Wow.
And so there is some controversial things like that. And I think, Emil, you tell me what you think, Emil. See, if I were advising the Democrats, what I would say is Democrats should sponsor a bill saying, hey, cut out anything that make white people uncomfortable in education. If it's organic chemistry, we want that banned. And then make the Republicans have to vote or walk out or whatever. We want to cut out white history because that's racial. Any history that's racial, we should remove it.
Bro, you play in a game I often think about, which is like, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander, right? This is something that I don't think the Democratic Party has really embraced, because they're like, if remember the old Michelle Obama, if they go low, we go high. Right. That doesn't work in today's political game. And the thing is, it's not about how low you can go or a race to the bottom or a fight in the mud. What it is, are you getting the attention of the voter in a way that they can understand? And right now, to be a little crass, but to make sense of it, a nut shot works. And the Democrats are not willing. They're still playing with rules that don't apply to the arena. So, for instance, if there is a bill that sponsors fake electors, and I read some of that bill, right, that should be an albatross around the Republicans' neck all day. You should be like, wait a second. You have a governor who stood up to the president. You have a secretary of state who stood up to the president, and yet you're trying to fund the fake electors.
When you don't do that, Emil, I'm gonna let you. When you don't do that, then a guy who was one of the big fake elector supporters, the guy who was still, resist the steal or whatever that Trump was doing, one of the biggest voices in that was Brandon Beach, and guess what? He just got appointed as U.S. Treasurer. His name is now going to be on all the money.
Wow.
Brandon Beach.
Right.
Because he didn't do the right thing. Who's the number one candidate for governor? Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, who was a fake elector.
These are wagon wheels that should be hanging around people's necks, and they're not, because you're not, in my opinion, the Democratic Party is not playing the right game. You've got to use what is in front of you, just like the Republicans are. The Republicans are willing to put right in front of you a very easy decision, Senate Bill 1. It's not hard to understand what's being played here. So the first thing they should do in the 2026 session is they should put the very first bill as something as obvious and easy as this. Why should the state of Georgia pay for a fake elector's defense? That doesn't even make that makes no sense. It'd be different if they were paying for Paffenberger, whatever his name is, the
Rothenberger.
If they're paying for his bills because he's fighting the good fight, but these people ain't fighting the good fight. They didn't fight the good fight.
Let's split what you're saying. Let's split what you're saying. Let's split what you're saying. Like saying they should hang it on their neck. The audacity to push the bill shows you how they're fighting. Like the people have the audacity to push the bill. So when I'm listening to you guys, again, I'm learning from you, but as I'm listening to you, what it sounds like to me, to make an analogy, is the Democrats are boxing with big boxing gloves on against an MMA fighter with actual small gloves who's using MMA rules, and they're still just boxing. The other guy can kick you, can sweep you, and you're just only boxing and can't even grab because you got on big boxing gloves. That's correct. The analogy that's playing out in my head as I listen to you guys speak on this.
And that's playing out in Georgia, but it's also playing out across the country. It is just a different level of strategy that you have to play. And if I were to vote Democratic, I'm an independent, but I will play the game Montoya asked me to play and represent the more progressive side in this way. I would immediately pull all of the strategists that in every state that the Democrats have lost, and I would say this to them: either you learn how to box MMA, either you learn how to fight MMA, or get packing, because there's no other way to play this game right now. Would I love to see our politics elevate to something much more civil and
back to boxing, classic?
I would love that.
That would be the beauty, right? Bring it back to boxing.
That would be exactly what I want. But here's the thing: we're playing MMA, WWE, TNA Impact. We're AEW. Like, we're in a different game, and the more you guys don't understand that, the easier you're making the other side play their game with no competition. The whole point of an adversarial two-party system, I think some people miss this, is you sharpen each other by having a robust opposition that forces compromise, that forces thinking. But if you can't play the game, there are states around the country that are bright red and bright blue where the parties have become slothful. They've become weak and very, very soft in terms of their policy because they have no real opposition. So you need a robust opposition in an adversarial system in order to ensure you don't let corruption, you don't let bad policy, you don't let things that could be checked by a robust opposition go unchecked. Part of the checks and balances isn't just three-party system. It's an adversary that understands how to fight to win those votes from the margin. So it's 49-51 one year, it's 59 or 41-50 or 51-49 the next year. Like, you have to be willing to play in that space where it's now a marginal competition, because it ain't gonna be landslides anymore, especially in a state like Georgia.
And we walking out because he's kicking, ref. I'm getting out of the ring. I walked out. Go ahead, Leo.
I wanna play some because it kind of shocked me, and it's kind of speaking to the question. And I want to go and talk about some of the things like related to education too.
Yeah,
but I want to play this. I'm gonna play this. Montoya, I might get in trouble for this, but I hope I don't with you. But I want to talk to Emil and you about this. Listen to this, because what we're talking about is why I know a lot of dim political strategists. I've even worked with some. I know these people they're smart people. So what's going on? Why aren't the dim strategists? Listen to this and tell me what you think, Emil.
All right.
Black people are going to vote for the best candidate. White people are going to vote for the best candidate. Asian, Hispanic, gay, straight. What it's got to be about is who's going to win in November of 2026. Yeah, and I don't know that people make that calculation. I think about this all the time. What you're talking about is is on top of mind for me is this, and it's really, I don't know that that's what voters in the primaries are thinking about. The voters that I am talking to, who are elites? No, I'm in the streets, bro. No, come on, man. I tell you what, we should do this one day, Lisa. I should let Brian roll.
All right, let me stop right there. The reason I'm playing that, some of y'all may know those voices. I mean, look, I love both those men. I know both those men real well. The first voice you hear is a Democratic strategist who worked for Obama, worked for Keisha Lance, worked for the mayor. He's worked for a lot of great Democrats, Theron Johnson. Look, and the other one is Brian Robinson, who worked for Governor Deal, Robinson Republic, strong Republican strategist. And you hear Brian saying that in a primary, folks are just into ideological divides. That's what you have to bang on. Theron is saying, the Democrat strategist. Now, again, I like Theron. Theron is saying, no, they vote on issues and who's more likely to win. And
I was blown away when I heard that.
Yeah. And I'm like, this is why they're losing.
What world are you in?
Right. And then he goes, and he then says, Theron, who lives in $1 million house, drives around in fancy cars. I mean, look, he'll laugh at me for saying these things because he knows I'm saying what is true. Theron kids go to serious private schools and blah, blah, blah. He talking about he in the streets. Come on. And then and Brian Robbins is like, no, we went to and did an event at Spelman. That's not in the streets. Only 30% of Black people go to college. And people in America.
38% of Americans go to college.
That's a minority, Theron Johnson. And Spelman is one of the top universities in the nation. It's a private. I mean, come on, dude. That's not in the streets. So part of the reason I think, Emil, that Democrats are having a problem is they too busy in Armani suits, man. They don't even, and then they pretend to be on the streets. And if you're pretending to do something, you're not dealing with reality. And if you can't deal with reality, you can't win.
You know what's so funny is you're 100% right in that context. And this is something that I will tell my Democratic strategists if they're listening. First of all, let's go back to the primary conversation real quick. I am an election worker. I understand who votes in every single election. It's one, not enough of us, and two, only the most rabid voters from either party.
Activists.
That's it. Those people, if you look in Virginia, where I am, the next election is June 17th. It's going to be a primary election, right? Who votes on June 17th? Only people who are motivated to vote already, who know and are in the know to vote on that day. You're not getting the best candidate. You're getting the candidate that passes muster for those voters. Right. And the problem that I will tell anybody is, if you want to have outsized impact, take your block to the primary where you can affect change. Montoya talks about this all the time. He's like, if you really want to do some damage in this political system, get your little block of 10,000 people in your state and vote in every single election and watch what happens. You can have major impact. That's what the Tea Party did. I say that because when you talk about the other side, which is the part where these strategists are trying to prop people up in certain positions, they're not getting the people who would vote for them in the primary in the first place. You got to get people out of their chairs, off of their couches, and into the polls. You're not going to do that by being, quote unquote, in the street. You have to do that by appealing to the issues that matter, whether you're wearing Armani or Goodwill. Do you appeal to the people who understand in a way that they can understand the day-to-day impact, especially at state and local? If they understand that what you're trying to do represents their concerns, it don't matter how nice your suit is or how raggedy. What matters is they understand that their concerns will be heard. I do not believe these strategists, as presented by that conversation and others that I've seen, are getting that message.
Man, I think if anything right now, and I hope somehow we can, I'll cut this show up if necessary, but what we're talking about now is what's necessary for specifically the opposition party, right? We did a show on, we even asked, is the Democratic Party in general a good opposition party to the current administration? And as you've already pointed out, Emil, that's just necessary, specifically when we are unfortunately limited to two parties being most effective. At the end of the day, ideally, if we had the power, there would be a third party at this point to maybe bring some of the balance we would all want, but that's our ideal world. I'm just highlighting, just in the sense that we continue to watch, in a sense, one party relatively act spineless in so many areas, right? Like we talked about how the Democrats didn't support the brother that walked out during the inauguration speech, that type of thing. So it's just these continuous examples of being, if we want to simplify everything that you've just heard from Leo just now, from Emil just now, if you want to simplify it, it's literally simplified down to being not in touch with what voters want.
Yeah, Democrats need a listening tour. They need to get out of, and look, I'm a conservative, and I believe that as a conservative, I want to conserve what is good and true. But to know what is good and true means I have to have good debate and opposition to my ideas, which will sharpen my sword and sharpen my ideas, which is better for all people. I want political process to lead to better public service for our citizens, for you and me, for our children, your children, etc. Now, that can't happen if there's no good opposition. So this is why, in football, we have scrimmages against teams that we hope will show our weaknesses, right? So we do that intentionally. Well, the Democrats are not providing the kind of opposition that make the Republicans stop all their foolishness, right? So I want the Democrats to lead better, to have better strategy, to push Republicans into honest conversations about things. And so I'm willing to say some things here on your show, Montoya, with Brother Emil, because I really do want Democrats to lead better. If someone once asked me, a group of men at Harvard, I was doing a show for them, and they asked me, these are Harvard's first Black graduates, and they said, why aren't you just a conservative Democrat? And I said, because they don't fight.
Oh,
Because why would I go to them when I can't? So I'm looking at what got passed: child tax credit, religious liberty, income tax reduction, the good policy you're talking about, education, making sure we focus on kids can focus on education in school, not who's tweeting them and and the bullying that goes on in social media during the day. Really kind of getting to stuff that really advances people's capacity and ability, children's capacity and ability. Real hardcore stuff that makes us better. I want to be part of that. And that's what we're talking about here. Yeah, the DEI stuff, again, y'all have heard me talk about that on this show. That's some stuff that's going on. We had sports betting going on. We had some gun control measures related to the school shooting up there. So school safety measures. Democrats got to get ahead of this thing. And as we look at the federal government doing some nonsense right now, right? So if we're looking at some of the stuff that we're concerned about, okay, so it's not nonsense if you get ahead of the game, Democrats, and now look towards the 2026 session with some bills that talk about if you're reducing the Department of Education's oversight, we're proposing a bill to set up the proper oversight at the state and local level. Dems, please bring it.
Montoya, this is what he's speaking facts. I don't understand why we're not seeing a more creative and robust push from the Democratic Party. And I'm going to bag on the Democratic Party a little bit because they did something that is completely opposite their best interest, in my opinion. What did they do? During the State of the Union address, a lone man stands up and speaks truth to power. Beautiful moment. And then has to be escorted out because the sergeant at arms has to keep order in the house. Understood. Who walked out with him? Who said, I support my Democratic brother, and I want y'all to see that walking out, which was the perfect optics for the moment. And then you follow that up the next day by putting a bill on the floor and being a sponsor and have the entire Democratic Party co-sponsor that bill on the floor that addresses the issues he raised. That's how you be a good opposition. You force people to have conversations. And what happens? The national press picks up this bill that's co-sponsored by every Democrat in the House of Representatives. They pick it up and they say, this language is something that concerns all of us. But they didn't do that. So what did we see in Georgia as a microcosm of that kind of askew thinking? They walk out on a bill that affects, right now, 5 people. And they stand proudly in support of that moment, which means that there's other bills which should have had that kind of attention that didn't get it. Things that could have been amended that weren't amended. Things that could have been made better for the people that weren't made better for the people because our Democratic Party wasn't present to sharpen those bills.
So you say you don't understand it. I say I absolutely understand it. And I understand it due to the simple word I used just a few minutes ago. When you're out of touch, you'll get on camera and say, we came down here to handle business, and what did we get? Theater. You actually think we're stupid. That's what that looks like to me. I'm just calling it what it is. I ain't on one side or the other. I will call out what needs to be called out, and because the in a sense, generally speaking, the majority of the party is out of touch, and if the guy you're talking about, Leo, is actually in the streets, and I've been hearing it for most of my life, I only do grassroots stuff. So as someone who's actually in the grassroots level of our community, the consistent concern is, are these political legislators, regardless of party, are they actually concerned with what my concerns are? That's right. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, people in the streets feel often, and especially the African-American community, that neither of them on either side are actually concerned with what they are concerned about. I hear that every day. So if you get the guy you got a relationship with, tell him to come to mental dialogue and he'll find out what people really talking about.
You should invite Theron on because you can tell us why he thinks Spelman is in the streets. It's just like that's some stuff right there. I say go to the basketball hoop, go to the basketball courts in Southwest Atlanta. That might give you a better idea. But that's it.
But see, here's the problem, and this is across the political spectrum, that the elites are not always looking for a reason to, let me say it this way. There are enough people making enough money that if they're disconnected, it doesn't affect their bottom line. A long time ago, that
both sides, right, Emil?
Both sides.
Right.
A long time ago, that wasn't true.
Right.
You had to be about the street. You had to be on Main Street in order to get people's attention because your fortunes were tied to their fortunes. That started to separate during the Reagan administration, and it got worse in the 2000s, and it's really bad after the pandemic. People who are wealthy have less entwined fortunes with people who are less wealthy. So that means they can make money independently, which means they don't necessarily have to respond to those needs. And I'm sorry, but that's a problem across the political spectrum that we're seeing play out every day.
You guys had Montoya Mental Dialoguers. Montoya, you broke this. I mean, you had Shelley Winter on your show that said something about the election, the past election for president was when it came to Black Americans, where they were setting up a situation where the House Negroes, I don't know if he called it like that, were opposing the field Negroes. Well, it's becoming clear. And I mean, again, I want to hear these brothers. I want to talk to them. But a lot of Democrat strategists, they're acting a little bit like House Negroes who can't relate to what's really happening on the street. And they're using the language about being down with the culture and stuff just in a performative way, not in an actual engaging way that is dealing with reality. That's something that they really got to break through. They need to have listening tours in community centers and churches. They need to, because the church was pretty much non-existent in the past presidential election, and maybe we need to look for people in a different place anyway. I mean, the church isn't always where everybody is. Right. So they got major problems on how to get in touch. Now that's going to become real evident as you look at all these people, and I'm segueing here, Montoya, and the time we got left, we got a governor's race coming up. We got a big
matter of fact, let me do this real quick. Let's go to that's exactly where I was about to go. So let's do that right now and close this thing out. I hope some of what we're doing, what we just had, we can get this to some of these strategists. And just if they care, maybe they're cool in their big houses and not really worrying. You know what I mean? But if they care, I hope they get some of what we just said. But let me play this cut and we'll definitely close this out. All right, this is a very quick one.
A familiar name in politics is looking to be Georgia's next governor. Former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms tells 11 Alive that she will run to become the next governor of the state. Bottoms previously served as mayor of Atlanta from 2018 to 2022. She later held a senior advisory role in the Biden administration. Bottoms would be the first major Democrat to file. Georgia Attorney General Republican Chris Carr has also entered the governor's race.
So I'm going to tank the water just a little bit here. One of my members highlighted when she announced that she was planning on the run. I just wanted to share his thoughts, and I'm curious at what either of you would have to say. I'm actually going to start with you, Emil. Again, I know you're not here in Georgia, but everybody, in a sense, knows her just because, again, she's been the mayor and she played a big pivotal role with the pandemic, in a sense, battling Kemp and that kind of thing. But one of my members said this. He says, this is about her running for governor. He says, this is so damn tone deaf of her team. Keisha Bottoms doesn't even have favor to win another mayoral race in Atlanta. She wasn't a great mayor, honestly. She was just okay and would have closed Atlanta if not for Kemp. Stacey Abrams and Keisha will leave you thinking the same thing. What did they actually do to improve a city beyond increasing their speaking appearance fees? These traditional Dems are not anti-Trump party medicine. It's time for brand new faces and a rise of a third party. And this is a young brother in his mid-30s who's been with Mental Dialogue for a long time. I don't tell anybody how to think. I just thought it was interesting to see his take And I was curious at what y'all response might be in light of her announcing that she's running for mayor. Your thoughts, Emil, to what that young brother had to say.
Yeah, he's 100% in my opinion, because my brother lives in Atlanta, so I follow the politics in the state a little bit. And one of the things that I learned was that she was not that she was a bad mayor, she just wasn't the mayor of the moment. She didn't really lead the way the city could have been led. And I understand why people complain, but more importantly than that, she's almost a generic Democratic candidate at this point. She doesn't stand out in a way that makes sense. And certainly she doesn't have the connection to the people that Leo was talking about earlier. That's going to be a problem for her. She's going to have to figure out how to stand out in a way that nobody else really does in this market, if you will. And if he's right, perhaps the play would be for her to declare herself an independent early in this process. The Democrats want her to run as a Democrat, but quite frankly, I don't know that she will stand out as a Democrat, but she will stand out as somebody independent, and maybe not her, but maybe another leading candidate needs to say, I'm making a clean break on purpose. It'll galvanize a lot of headlines. And if they do the kind of grassroots work you're talking about, Montoya, perhaps they can get a lot of momentum. Perhaps they'll just be a lamb that sacrifices for a greater good.
A long-term play. Possibly.
There's a long-term play here that needs to happen, and that is, are the Democrats going to wake up and become like Stacey Abrams, as flawed as she was as a candidate, almost won. Imagine if she did a lot more of the things that Leo's talking about. She might have been able to pull off an upset. She might have been able to do it, but I don't think Keisha Lance Bottoms is going to be able to do it in the current state of affairs that I see right now.
Leo, your thoughts?
No, I think Emil has said a lot. I think it's an interesting idea that Emil presents as her running as an independent. Without a doubt. I mean, I've spent some time personally sitting and chatting with former Mayor Bottoms. There are some obstacles that she'd have to overcome. One being that she's quit 2 jobs that were just given to her, which one being the mayor of Atlanta that she resigned from. That's hard to overcome. And so if she's going to expand her statewide recognition, Emil is right. She needs to do something massive that gets people to ignore the stuff that's already on the record, right? She needs to do something massive to show that she is not a Biden sycophant, and Biden brought us Trump 2.0. And so she's got to do something to really separate herself. And that's going to be hard to do that. And so Emil's right. She needs to do something massive that gets her the attention, like John Fetterman got, or Manchin, who kind of rolls in that I'm sort of a moderate conservative Democrat kind of space, independent space, Fetterman, independent space. So that has to be done by former Mayor Bottoms. And I'm not sure that she has the advisory team to help her do something like that. And then she's going to have to get some Republicans to want to vote for her. And she's actually pretty good with TikTok stuff. She likes to do soul food and stuff like that and connect with regular people on that basis. But it's going to have to be more than that. Mm-hmm. Because it's also going to be a pretty big field. There's a lot of Democrats. I mean, you got Jason Estevez, sort of rising local person. He came from city council, then he's state rep. You got Lucy McBath thinking about it. She's kind of suspended her campaign, but she had announced for governor. She's suspended because her husband is ill, and she says, I'm suspending now. Suspending a campaign, y'all, that's Congresswoman Lucy McBath, who ran on mostly gun safety issues. She's been there for a while. She's an experienced, capable politician. She can talk on both sides of the aisle. She's capable. Suspension means that she is keeping her money. She's going to keep a campaign account open that she might run anyway. Then you got Michael Thurman, an OG, who a lot of conservatives like him. He's a Democrat, but a lot of conservatives like him. He's a former DeKalb County CEO. And you got Jason Carter, the grandson of Jimmy Carter, the Carter, legacy. He is putting together an exploratory committee. So when you look at Keisha compared to those other names that I just mentioned, Michael Thurman and Jason Carter, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of strategy. And there's going to be other people, and I'm not even talking about the Republicans in the race when it comes to the general, but it's going to be really tough. And I just wonder what's motivating her to want to do this.
There's Leo, you the slate of people that you mentioned, I would be concerned if I were her team that, they could come in with size 13, size 14 shoes and really disrupt any momentum that she could be building. But there has to be a conversation about what's happening across the country and what's happening because of that in Georgia, right? So you have tariffs, you have ICE doing its raids, you have people being snatched up off the street without warrants, without badges, with all that kind of stuff. And that stuff is front of mind for people in Georgia. So this is an opportunity for someone like her, if she really wants to be the front runner, not to just be anti something, but to be for some very important principles that people can feel and see right now. And that's kind of where I would position her, is like, show me in a visceral way how you care about these freedoms, these liberties, these opportunities. How many businesses in Georgia were turned upside down by these tariffs? How are you helping them? Show us how you care about these little big things, little things being in that I wasn't arrested and other people I know weren't arrested, but people are getting arrested. How are you going to care about that? How are you going to affirm these rights and liberties for the people of Georgia? Because right now there's an opportunity to be that voice for the people, but you got to start today and you got to be strong with it. You cannot come lukewarm or wishy-washy and say, well, I can see no, it has to be something clear, and you got to do it now, and you got to be real.
And the more I listen to you guys, and again, I just keep running back to I'm in the streets, that comment. This young brother, I think he's about 33, 34. So he's doing well for himself. So he's coming to that age where, local politics becomes important, if you will, right? In your teen, unless you just go into politics for the most part, you just kind of vote every year. But he's at that stage where, it's important to him. And he just simply says, just the announcement of her running, this is so damn tone deaf of her team. That's how he opens the thing. And I'm just saying, here's what somebody in the streets is saying.
Right.
It just highlights how out of touch some that are choosing to be in the political space are with what actual voters care about. And of course, I jump for joy when I hear the brother say rise of a third party. For as long as I've been independent, I love to hear more young people realizing, generally speaking, I'm not saying that the parties in themselves are the problem, but I definitely choose and have long chosen, all you speak to me is political talking points, because I know those are really just set up to emotionally have me vote for you and not care about the issues. If a politician only speaks talking points, I can't hear them.
Don't let them keep pimping your trauma. Look,
exactly.
I'm a Black American. I'm a descendant of slavery. There are traumatic things that have happened to us. But if we get trapped in the trauma, then we're being played by people who are Black elites, white elites, it doesn't matter. White elites are pimping and playing on the trauma of white folks who are concerned about their way of life, and Black elites are pimping Black folks and playing on their trauma about racism and oppression. What you need to tell them is that, brother, I understand the trauma piece. Give me your discrete, concrete ideas on how I can pay my bills, get a good education, drive safely down the road, make sure I got a job, make sure I got safe food coming to my house. Let's work on that in the Booker T. Washington style of, let's give me the things I need to build a community.
Absolutely.
And, now you're doing two things at once, Leo. You're saying that the trauma is real and the solutions are present, right? You need both. You can't just say, well, there's a lot of politicians who will ignore the trauma and focus on solutions and not recognize, hey, I'm feeling something right now, and that feeling is real. It's certainly real to me. On the other side, you have politicians who only appeal to the trauma and pay lip service to the solution. But when you marry the two, as you have seen many politicians successfully do. What you're saying to people is there is a path through a candidate like me to healing the trauma. And no, it is not the government's job to heal the trauma. The government's job is to set the stage where trauma can heal. So let me give you schools that work. Let me give you streets without potholes. Let me give you police that actually deal with the problem instead of having safety behind the blue shield. Let me show you what it looks like when your government steps out of your way and allows you to rise with your own merit as the basis.
And if I can close with this, again, a challenge to our viewers, to our watchers, when we say the power of one vote matters. If you're not pimped, as I like how Leo used that word, if you're not pimped by those who only emotionally appeal to the traumas, again, either side, if you're not being pimped, then it's imperative that you do take the responsibility to put people in leadership who will actually go to the issues. So that's where your role is. Don't be in the 85 million that don't show up and just get thrown whichever way. Still, don't just reduce and say every politician is pimping you. You have the power to put someone, and that's what we hope by raising the consciousness of our viewership, of our community with politics, because at the end of the day, if you do not govern yourself, so if you do it by not choosing to vote, if you do not govern yourself, you're not in a society. You're not part of that society. You're just going to be on the tail end. So I say all of this to, as we've kind of talked down on certain politicians being a certain way, let's not leave it in the hands of them to say, hey, that's just what they're going to do. We have a power to change it with our vote and run the candidates who will speak to the issues. So that becomes our ask of us versus just leaving it in their hands. So that's how I would love to close the show. Leo, thank you for a great show. Thank you, Emil. If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. If this appeals to you, I'm going to end the show and going to say subscribe to our channel. So subscribe so you'll get the alerts, but also share this show with people. We're trying to give you a different listen, a different way to hear politics versus the slant that you're getting in the media all the time. So see till next time, episode 23 coming y'all way next week. Y'all stay in the background real quick.